right. Well, we hope we have some folks joining us this afternoon for our discussion with our panelists, who are also our jurors for the Yarmouth Arts Festival. This is the 12th year of the Yarmouth Arts Festival, which is put on by St. Bart's Episcopal Church in Yarmouth, and we're very lucky 12 years ago to under the leadership of Joe Michaud to start this, which is a juried art show with Maine artists. And the sanctuary at the church, which is a beautiful post and beam building, is a perfect spot for an art gallery. So as I said, we're in our 12th year and we want to introduce our jurors who are here today to talk about their experience and their perspective on art in Maine. And so I want to welcome Ann Haas, Bob Keys, and Wes Lafountain. Yeah, did I say it right? Now I'm nervous.
Yeah, close enough.
I know. Now I'm nervous about it. But and I just want to give a little introduction to each of you. Anne has been the art librarian at Bowdoin from 1986 to 2020 and has happily retired from that position, and also supervised a small gallery at the Hawthorne Longfellow Library. I'm sorry, I'm having things come in here, featuring student work, and has traveled all over the world, and I think is very excited right now to focus on her own art and go to galleries and with more of a personal purpose than a work purpose. So thank you for working with us and being here. Bob Keys, many of you may know because he is a very active and busy writer at the Portland Press Herald. And I got yours. Bob's has been writing about arts and culture for the Press Herald and Maine Sunday Telegram since 2002, and received in 2017 the inaugural Rapkin Prize for Visual Arts Journalism, which recognizes his essential voice in the regional arts conversation, which he certainly is, and we appreciate that, and has received numerous national, regional, and state writing awards, and in 2014 received the Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance Distinguished Achievement Award for exceptional and steadfast contributions to the Maine literary community. He comes to us from Sioux City, South Dakota, and prior to that, Greenwich, Connecticut, and Waterville, Maine. So you've kind of made a circuit.
Yep.
And is a regular host of Maine Voices Live, which is an onstage and visual interview series with Maine newsmakers. So I suspect that's a very important thing right now, since we all can't get out. And then we have Wes, who comes from Winslow, Maine, and worked for Green Hut Galleries for a good stretch of time, 10 years. And that's when we met a long time ago when I had Port City Life magazine. Yeah. And has then in addition worked for 3 commercial galleries in Brunswick, Portland area, and then took the director position at the University of New Hampshire Museum of Art in 2009. He worked there for 4 years and then was at Philip Exeter Academy, and was curator at the Lamont Gallery at the Academy. Currently is a freelance curator, living in Exeter and working on 2 exhibitions at Phillips Exeter and an exhibit at Coast Street Arts in Portland that just opened last week. So we thank you all. And I'll just quickly tell our viewers that our process has been that these brave souls, when we have had submissions up to 650 works of art from Maine artists, and they review all 650. This year was 515, but go through them. And traditionally we've met together and gone through them painstakingly. But this year, because of the pandemic, everyone had the opportunity to be by themselves and go through the art and make their selections. And then we looked at the results, and I think we have about 160 pieces that are in the show this year, and it's online this year. And what's remarkable is it's going to run until October 31st. So if anyone is interested in going to YarmouthArtsFestival.com, I believe it's .com, and to look at the art and make a purchase, please do. But the amazing thing is we are already ahead of our, we've already sold 56 pieces, and that's beyond what we did last year. So I think I will talk about this later, but I think it follows on Bob's article about, was it 2 Sundays ago, about how well Maine art is doing, and galleries are busy with higher sales than people have seen recently. And I think this reflects the same situation. So anyway, so that I've said enough. And I just love the three of you to talk a little bit about the Maine art scene to start, and then talk a little bit about what you've seen at the festival and the submissions to the festival. So who would like to start?
Well, I'll start since you mentioned that story. That seems like a good jumping off point. It is true. Gallery sales in Maine are much stronger than people expected they would be this summer. There was a lot of concern with the pandemic in the spring that people were not going to buy art, that everybody was going to stay home and and be careful with their money. And as we know, the pandemic has affected different people in different ways, and people who are able to purchase art have stepped up and are continuing to do so in dramatic numbers. And galleries across the state, literally from York to Millinocket, told me they're experiencing some of the best sales they've ever had. And that's across the board, from very affordable pieces in the 50 to a couple $100 range up to pieces in the tens of thousands of dollars. And Sculptures and paintings alike, and other medium. It's been it's surprised a lot of folks. I think people expected sales would be down and this would be a tough year, but at least at this point. And in Maine, that's been the opposite. So
That's
what
good.
you're seeing with your sales, I think, reflects what galleries have told me that they have experienced so far this year.
That's great. Wes, how about you?
Well, that's pretty interesting. And I think, I suppose it's a testament to online viewing systems have gotten clean enough that you can trust what you're looking at. And I presume, Bob, that most of these sales are online sales as opposed to in person. But yeah, so it's very interesting. It's when I was up at Cove Street installing this show, it's just people are coming in, people are showing up for events. Everybody's washing hands and wearing masks and all that. But they're there and they're showing up, which is great.
Yeah. How about you, Anne?
Well, just through my own travels, and I usually try to buy at least one piece. It's never something that's terribly expensive. But I actually bought 3 this year. So I don't know. And usually I say, well, if I'm doing it, I'm not the only one. There are other people doing the same thing. Bob, I wanted to ask you, do you know how many of how those sales, were they mostly online or are they mostly in person?
Well, a combination of both. What Wes said is exactly right. Galleries have improved their ability to reach customers online, and customers trust what they're seeing more. So there is a lot of, if not actual sales online, certainly a lot of research done online, and people know what they're looking at. And certainly with some galleries and some artists, they're well enough established that people will be comfortable buying online. But even a lot of younger artists who have less of a resume per se are experience things online. But what I did hear is that as soon as galleries in Maine opened in June in a modest way with just a few people in the gallery at once, people showed up. People from Boston came up because they were eager to see some work. And in Portland, a lot of galleries told me that they had folks who traveled down to Portland in order to see some art in person because they had missed that experience. And the other thing that I was told is that people are not buying just 1 or 2 pieces of art, but often 3, 4, and sometimes 5 pieces at a time, either by a single artist or at once, just because they want to. It's not just a matter of supporting artists, but we're all spending a lot more time at home, and we want to improve our surroundings and also introduce more color and joy and positive things. And art obviously brings that into your house.
It does, for
Yeah,
sure.
it does. What are some of the trends you've seen over the last couple of years with our show? Um, you know, I think when we think of Maine and we think of Maine artists, those of us who are lay people, it's landscapes. And so I wonder if you've seen a change, different media, uh, what your thoughts are there.
I think the work's gotten a little more sophisticated than I remember. I don't know when I started this, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe.
Right.
And it seems to me that there's more variety in the subject. There's also more contemporary looking stuff. So many of the scenery things are all gorgeous and everybody wants them, especially people who don't live here. I mean, they want to be reminded every time they walk past that wall, oh, that's when I was in Maine last summer. But it seems to me that, I mean, I found it really easy to go through this list and say the yeses were very firm for me. And I don't know if Bob and Wes felt the same way, but it didn't, you know, and there were some that I just said yes, 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 yes to, you know, a bunch of them in a row, you know, because the style and the way that the person's technique looked really, really mature and really interesting. I don't know if that's just me or I was just in a hurry, but I have plenty of time now that I'm retired. So.
I found that, along with what Anne's saying, the diversity of mediums seems, I mean, this is like the third year I've done this. So I'm still feeling like a newbie, but I feel like, you know, if you go through, there's ceramics and there's textiles and things that, you know, they're not just paintings of landscapes, which we see a lot of and a lot of really good ones. So the variety of medium, and also there seemed to me to be a little more diversity of culture. It's not all about Maine. We had some Chinese ideograms, for instance, that were just, you know, kind of like, oh, yeah, this Maine is becoming an international place. It's not all about tidal pools and you know, island paintings. There's other things seen by a lot of other people from different cultures, and it was good to see that represented as well.
Yeah, that's true. There were also from people who had traveled and had done work from other places in the Southwest or Mexico or taken pictures in Europe or whatever, and they had taken, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I do think that it was easier for me to judge this year as well. And I don't know if that's because it was at home and it had the freedom of the time, but I found myself easier. It was easier for me to feel strong in my convictions about my choices. And in past years, I think I've struggled a little bit more. I felt much more confident that the work was that much stronger this year, that it was easier to say yes. And maybe the distinction between a yes and a no is easier for me to see, perhaps. And you use the word sophisticated. I would absolutely agree with that. It's about the quality of the work. It's about the geography. It's also about just the way people see the world. It's not just through a Maine lens, and that's absolutely reflected in a lot of the submissions, and I think a lot of the selections.
That's great. I think one of the downsides, though, is that we don't get to see them mounted. So see kind of the fruits of your labor, but hopefully that, well, you know, who knows if this will remain an online show because it really has gone so well. I do have a question from someone asking, when viewing the artwork, did you view the body of each artist's work all at once or in no particular order?
I don't know.
I'll start.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Anne.
No. I was just going to say, I mean, we got each artist's work. And they were by artist. So if you submitted 4 paintings, we saw all 4 of that person's paintings.
Yeah, exactly.
And we could go back to them anytime we wanted to. I mean, that was the other thing.
Yeah, and you could click through each one. You could see all the whole number together in a display, and then you would click through each one individually. You could go forward, you could go back. So, yep.
Do you all think that I've noted over the years more and more photography, and wondering how you see photography as a fine art, and you know, if that's obviously it is a fine art, but if that's changing, and if the you know, I know that we've been trying to make sure there's a good balance, but just thoughts on photography.
I'm gonna let Wes take that one.
Okay.
You have I mean, because you work in a gallery, so you're curating.
I know photography, I guess, has a somewhat problematic history in terms of being accepted as an art form, but that was a long time ago.
Right.
And I enjoy looking at it. I respect it for what it is. I don't think I judge it any differently from any other medium. I'm looking at composition, balance, color if it's color, black and white if it's not. I try to engage a medium on its own terms and see where it takes me, and photography is no different for me on that regard.
That's great.
I recall that there were quite a number of entries in photography in this show, and I'd like to see I'd be curious about the numbers in terms of submissions and selections. But I remember being struck early on in the judging process at how many good photographs there were early on in that process. And I remember thinking there were a couple in particular. I thought, wow, another really nice photo. And that was an early emotional reaction that I had while judging.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll be honest. I sometimes look at the price maybe more when I'm looking at a photograph than when I'm looking at a painting, but that's not always relevant. So I don't want to say I always do that, but I think it does enter into it. It's not the only one, and that it's possible there's 10 more out there. And so that you give it a little thought. It's just not a high spread kind of show. And I don't know.
Well,
But they're good. They're amazing. And some of them I even thought were paintings.
Yes.
There was a couple that I had to look and see if it was a painting or a photograph, and I was surprised that it was a photograph. So
I agree with that. I had the same reaction a couple times.
yeah.
So one person said, did the pieces prices influence your choices? That's a hard thing to say.
They did not for me. I believe I was aware of the prices, but they did not influence me whatsoever. Nope.
Same here. Prices didn't matter.
The longer I've done this, the less it speaks to me about that. But I want people who don't have a lot of money to be able to buy art, and so that's always in my some subconscious level. If it's something that. But I mean, for the most part, work like anything else, the size is what dictates a circular kind of a range of prices, and that's just the way things are if they're not Michelangelo. But
all that being said, I do look at the price just to kind of give me a little more information, and sometimes I feel like, wow, that's a great price. But just to get a sense of where in the marketplace does this artist feel they fit. So I consider it a valid consideration for a juror to look at, but I don't think it particularly influences any decision on my part.
Another question is, let's see, two questions. One is, how did you all come to an agreement on which ones should be selected? And I'll just say that I can kind of answer that what we have done over the years is that we've asked our jurors to, when we look at a painting or a piece of art, yes, maybe, or no. And then we see what the three, where they all come out. It's a pretty democratic process. So, and obviously when we were all together, you all discussed the works of art, but this year everyone was doing it individually. So I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that.
Well, last year, I know we came right up with a magic number almost immediately with all of our first choices. Was that similar this time, or did you find it harder this time for your end, Laurie?
Well, it was pretty easy this year. You hit the number. And we had some flexibility, a little more flexibility, because in the past we're limited by space. Right. And obviously online we're not. So we didn't want to overwhelm those who are looking at the art, those who might be considering buying art, to have so many. But obviously we're getting a good response. So the other question I had was, and I guess this really goes to those of us on the back end, have you found that the online shows received a broader audience and people purchasing aren't here in Maine? So, I don't know the answer to that. And Joe is on, and he might be able to jump in with any perspective he has, because he has seen the sales.
Yeah, it's hard to tell from, most of the sales this year have been in-state. We've had a few from out of state, despite the fact that we're online only. Um, Not all the artists are offering shipping, so that's a consideration. In past years, we've actually had a lot of people come through the show from out of state and buy. Tourists, traveling through. As Ann said, they're buying something to remember the state front by. And not always the traditional pieces that they're buying either. But it's been interesting to see, we have a guest book in the physical space where people kind of sign in where they came from, and they're from all over the US.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a lovely note from Mike Sosnek. I apologize for mispronouncing, but he said, "Thank you for a wonderful show in these very hard times. One of the best each year here in Maine." So tribute
That's great.
to our
Yeah.
artists and those who submit, and to you all for the choices that you've made. So it's interesting. Another question, Joe, for you is, are you tracking the number of people visiting the site?
Yeah, I see that. I don't think we have a tool on the site yet to track traffic. Obviously something we'd like to have. Mostly it's about sales, but we do seem to be getting good activity, really good activity on the Facebook page. So yeah, I can't give you a number,
Okay.
but I have to think just from the sales activity, we must have a lot more traffic than we've had in the past.
So I've got a question for you guys. What is your advice to artists in Maine? How to get noticed, how to get, step to the next level? Okay, and then I've got a follow-up question. So what is your advice to those who would like to be in the Yarmouth Art Festival or in others?
Well, I'll just say very generally, work honestly and work passionately. It's important that when I look at art, whether it's for an art show or for a story that I'm considering at the newspaper, it's important for me that the art speak to me and that it be an honest expression of what the artist is trying to convey. So it can't be forced, and it can't be contrived, and it can't be trying to fit into a certain realm. It has to be an honest expression. And that's first and foremost. I'm much less interested in the technical execution.
Yeah, that's what I tell my, I was in the art history library, though we also were used by the studio art division, though that changed somewhat when the studio division moved out of our building to another building, but we still had visits from those classes. And the one thing I would always tell those kids when they were like, they'd have to do something for an assignment, and they'd spend hours and hours and hours trying to find the right thing for a master copy or something. And I'd be like, no, just flip through and find something that just grabs you, and then you'll be on the right track. But it is, I agree, the authenticity is really important when you read the little blurbs about the artists and you see what they were doing or where they were doing it or why they were doing it. That all has a lot of meaning, I think, for people who are buying their work. It just gives it some personal connection to the artist, and that's nice when you have that hanging in your house. You like to know something about the person that did it. So
Very
especially with
true.
contemporary art.
Yeah.
And we do have the artist bio, so at least they can use that connection, which is nice. Another question is art. I'm going to just read it. Art versus craft. Do the jurors and the show go there?
No.
I don't.
Nope. To me, I won't say it's irrelevant, because that's not true, but it's the distinction is not something I think much about.
And we don't get too many things that I would consider craft, because even if they're woodworking kinds of things, I love those fish things that had.
Yeah.
Joe, can you put those fish up with the?
Link Stevens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, those are,
Yep.
there's such an artistic view of something that it doesn't matter that their execution is maybe something that somebody would consider a craft, because I think that the craft person didn't think of that. The artist person thought of that.
Right. Here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Those just crack me up. I just
Great.
And they sell very well, I understand.
yeah,
correct?
we've had this stuff before, and I thought, oh yeah, there he is again.
Yeah, good. Laurie, I want to go back to your question in terms of advice
Yes.
from my perspective in the media. I think it's really important for an artist to understand what he or she not only wants to say with the work, but with a very simple artist statement. So often I read them and they're overwrought and they're trying to say too much. Just a simple statement of what you're trying to convey, either with the piece or with your work in general, but don't overthink it. And the other thing is make it easy for us to use images in terms of JPEGs that are easy to handle, easy to download. They don't have to be large files. But in terms of just getting exposure for your work and trying to get into a show or get some publicity in the newspaper, just present your information as clearly and concisely as you can. And make sure your contact info is obvious and up to date.
That's
You know, I
great.
thought of something, I was in Freeport the other day, and there are a number of storefronts that are empty because of COVID or who knows what. But they are turning to having little pop-up art shows in there. And so I would say to any budding artists out there, if you know a budding artist, say, well, if you've got a body of work, you've got 10 or 12 pieces that you want to show, contact the real estate agent and see if they will be willing to let you put something up. I mean, they're just in the windows on there. The buildings aren't open, but the work is in the windows of the storefronts, and the artist's name and phone number and whoever is there. I mean, I bought a piece that way this summer
Cool.
in what used to be some donut place in Freeport. So,
Yeah, I think to address that question a little more fully from my standpoint, I think it's, as Bob and Anna both talked about, it's about passion, it's about perseverance. Oftentimes, the second is bigger than the first. You just got to hang in there and get rejected a bunch of times, and you never know. But I think it's just so important to just keep at it. I like what I think, Anne, you were the one who mentioned this about knowing a little bit about the piece that you buy. Being able to sort of tell the story of who you are and how this piece came to be. I, another lifetime or two ago, was an artist who got just totally taken away by artist stories. And I ended up becoming an art historian because I just love the stories that went along with the work as much as I like the work. So, you never know where it's going to end up, but again, perseverance is key.
Well, Wes, you are curating shows. So, how do you determine who will be in that show? What are you looking for? Is there a theme that drives it, or?
It depends. There are artists that I see that I know I want to show their work. There are ideas that I need to find artists to fit the idea. The show at Cove Street now has 7 artists in it. And I had the theme before I had the artists, and was fortunate to find the artists within the time frame that I had. And I'm very pleased with the show, but it really depends on what the idea is. Sometimes it's the artist that inspires it. Sometimes it's the theme.
Wes, when you do that, if you need certain number of works for a particular show, how do you get there? These people have to know you, or I mean, other artists out there might be interested in knowing I think you're frozen.
No, I'm just inhaling. That's a tough one. Curators try to get out there and see everything, which is impossible. But I think if you're in the game, somebody knows somebody who knows somebody, and they'll put you in touch. That's how a lot of it happens.
Yeah.
I'll be talking to somebody about an idea I've gotten. Oh, have you seen so-and-so's work? And maybe it's a great fit, maybe not, but names get put forth. I think it's tough to be an artist who's in the studio all the time. I think you do kind of have to get out there and just let people know.
Sorry. Oh, dear.
I don't know if that
I will just
question.
jump in here and say it was a year ago or so that Wes called me asking for ideas for the STEAM show, wanted to know if I had seen any artists who might fit in and that sort of thing. So it's a, it's a process of research and interviewing.
Well, I have a couple questions that have come on. One is online sales the new normal, such as auctions and sales? So,
I think it's part of the new normal, but I don't think you will ever replace the opportunity or the ability of seeing art in person. And as much as online sales have improved and people are comfortable buying, that does not replace the experience of seeing art in person, especially when you're considering a purchase.
I
But there's
completely
room,
agree.
obviously there's room for both, and
sure.
online sales are here to stay. And
Yeah.
every gallery, every auction house has a website that works, because they can't really survive well without one.
All right.
So
All right.
both are true.
I
One
think
of our, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Seeing the work in person, Bob, you're exactly right. Case in point, I've got an exhibition in Exeter that, because of pandemic, the physical show got postponed until next year. And in the meantime, we're doing a virtual exhibition of this artist. And a lot of his work is charcoal drawings that in real life are 44 inches by 33 inches. And on the computer screen, they're about 4 inches by 6 inches.
Right.
And you can't replace the experience of being in the same space with the work of art.
All right.
Which is how you will live with it in your home.
Yeah, and I would agree with that too, but it even works with little tiny pieces. I bought a little one at our show last year, just a little thing about this big, and I was going to give it to my son because it was of a buoy and he used to lobster and all that stuff. So, but when I got it, I was like, oh my gosh, I love it. I have to keep it. So I did. And he walked past it this year and said, oh, wow, that's really cool. So now I figure I have to give it to him for Christmas. But it was so much more impressive than it was on the screen, and it's, even though it was tiny. So I think, yeah, live is the best. And the art and the openings are fun, I mean,
I have
And
two.
actually, that brings up another point about artists presenting themselves and how to do it effectively. A good image of your artwork is essential. And if you have a good photographer who can capture an image of your work that perhaps shows some texture or shows how the colors mingle together or whatever the detail may be, that's obviously a big, big plus. The point being, those details really do matter in terms of the presentation.
So I have a comment from one of our volunteers who said she's heard a number of comments from new artists, as in the first time entries to our show. And they've said it was effortless and it was wonderful to be chosen by a renowned jury.
oh, wow.
Also, how do they keep their excitement through the large number of entries? I'd like to say it was wine, but I can't, that's not true.
No, I did mine in the morning. There was no wine. I don't know. We love art, all of us. So that's probably, you're looking at it everywhere you go always. And I think there are people in the world who don't notice it. So
Yeah, curiosity is big. Like to see what's out there.
yeah, I bet you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Curiosity is big, and there was a lot of. I think there were a lot of new names this year. I think I felt I was introduced to a lot of artists I did not know, and that's always a plus in my job. So it's an opportunity for me to expand my horizons, and I thought the process this year went very, very well in terms of the online jurying. It was very seamless for me, and it seemed very. I like the idea of being able to do it on my own time. I thought that it just made it. I felt more engaged with the work. I could spend more time with it, and I felt I was fair with the work, actually.
That's
And
great.
it was easier to go back and look at it again when just on our own, because you could just go find the artist again. I mean, I printed out the list and you make a little mark on it, and then you say, oh, I wanted to look at that one again. And it's easy to do that this way.
Yes. Yeah, no, we didn't have the conversations back and forth, which I missed.
I did too.
Yeah, I was just going to say that was the big disappointment for me, because it's such a learning opportunity to sit there and 3 different opinions about what you're looking at. It's a great give and take, and I really missed that this year. It was a little too isolated, just sort of sitting there by ourselves, looking at the work. I enjoy doing that, but I really enjoy the give and take of speaking different perspectives about the same work of art.
Well, maybe next year we can work on a hybrid model so that we can
Yeah.
individually and then talk about it as a group. A couple other things, questions. One is thank you for selecting a piece of my art this year and last year. Last year was the first time as a newbie artist at 44 to put my work out there for any sort of art show. So it was quite thrilling and an honor. I love the variety of the work selected this year. Thank you again for giving me my confidence a boost and enjoying this call too. That's from Jen McDonald. And then Sandra Huck said, is it appropriate for an artist to contact a judge to learn more about the acceptance of their work and to learn how to move forward?
Sure,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we talked to them at the opening.
So
Didn't-
maybe we'll find a way to
Sure.
connect people this year.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's wonderful. Let's see. No new questions at this moment, but I think I've always had this question because there's an artist that I love and I'm not going to mention names, but I was always surprised that he did not emerge or bubble up as a notable Maine artist. So, and we go back to the centuries where there are patrons, and I guess there are still patrons now, but what does it take? Why does one artist emerge and another doesn't? I mean, I know that's a big question.
Huge.
Yeah.
Van Gogh never sold a painting in his life. I mean, Constable never sold a painting in his life. So who knows? Luck of the draw. Patronage is huge.
Perseverance is a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
And nowadays, what we call marketing too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
question. That's a really interesting question about who emerges, and I struggle with that all the time in my job. How do I choose what artist to write about? I have limitless choices in museums and galleries, in just artists who are making work that deserves to be seen. And it's making those choices, I always say, is the most difficult part of my job, without question. And that extends to jurying something like this as well. There's no right or wrong choice, and it certainly is not arbitrary, but I could on Sunday write about somebody just as easily as somebody else, and there are a lot of really good stories out there. I could fill every Sunday's newspaper with an art feature and not run out of artists in years in Maine, and all those stories would be worthy. So like Ann said, who knows, pop culture is a funny thing, and I don't think artists should be worried about whether they make it or not, as much as what we said before, just making work that's honest and persevere and be true to yourself and trust that things will work out.
I've had a couple of friends who who are artists who had gotten stuck for one reason or another. They'd been doing the same kind of thing, and I'm no guru at all. But the thing I noticed when I looked at all these 35 years of looking at art in the art library, it seemed to me that often artists will change up what they're doing, that they'll do something for a long time and then they start doing a different subject or just something completely different. And I had mentioned that to a couple of these people. Well, things aren't going well now. Try something totally different that you've never done before. And it turned out to be good advice, because they said, oh, okay, well, I've never done those kind of sceneries, or, never done nudes, or I've never done, whatever. And they were able to find a new well of something in themselves. And it was nothing. And it just seemed like, and it's like anything, you get bored and then you get dried up and then you have to try something new. But I do think young people, and I see students all the time who, it takes them the 4 years they're at Bowdoin to get to the place that when they're seniors, that they're all of a sudden really experimenting with things that aren't in the classroom. They're finding their own way and they're changing up what they've been doing, and often very successfully.
So along these lines, this conversation just puts me in a mind of wondering, years ago, to make it in America, you kind of had to go to New York City. Even if you're from, say, Boston, you had to go to New York City. Are we beyond that? Can you make it anywhere these days?
I think the answer to that is yes. Yep. Not just because of the internet, but because of people's perspectives. And I think you can be an artist in Maine and have maybe not the same opportunities, but different kinds of opportunities than an artist in New York or wherever would have. Certainly going to New York is a great experience for a lot of different reasons, but I don't think it's a requirement.
Along these lines, it's just interesting talking about different kinds of art. One of our artists, Karen Gordon, has said, "Thank you for choosing two of my felted paintings. I appreciate the opportunity to bring felt work to a larger audience, especially to this audience in this wonderful show." So there we go. There's one of
Yep.
them right now. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you,
That
Karen.
speaks to
And
what Wes said earlier about the variety of work in this exhibition.
yeah. And Joyce Smith is also in the, it said it was a thrill to be accepted. Love that 35% of the proceeds go to outreach, and that has been a draw for her. So we are very pleased that that was the initial motivation, and nice that somebody noticed. So another Laura Goodwin has said, that being said, is it critical for an artist to have a signature, recognizable style, or is it okay to submit different styles?
Interesting. I think it's important for an artist to have a maybe, I don't know if it's a signature style per se, but certainly something that is his or hers, absolutely. But that should not limit an artist to only do that. Yeah. What do you folks think?
Yeah, I think that's a slippery issue. You want to establish yourself visually, but you don't want to be trapped into, now I have to paint that painting again because it's sold. If you're really feeling like you want to go a different direction, I think it's really hard for an artist to be able to make that decision and decide what kind of artist they want to be and what kind of box they might be putting themselves in by what they envision it takes to be successful.
Well, I think that's where the authenticity comes in too. An artist who is, I don't know, kind of established, I don't know if that's the right word, but I think that a lot of times an artist has an authentic view of things because of their own artist's eye. And so whatever they paint or make or build or draw or whatever is going to have that piece of their creativity in it. And you can say, oh, that's a Mary Smith, because you've seen other work that person has done. It doesn't mean they're doing the same painting over and over again, but there's something about their brushwork or there's something about their color scheme that's uniquely theirs. And that's what you can identify it that way. You can say, oh, I have 3 or 4 paintings by the same guy who long dead now, used to paint things and sell them at the Yarmouth Clam Festival. And they're all a little different and a little the same, but it's his style. I don't think he was doing a program. I think that's just who what he was. That's how he saw the world. It was either really big land part or really big sky parts. That was what he visualized. And I've got both kinds, but I do think it's about that artist and their own view. I don't think you can decide, maybe I'm wrong. Oh, I'm going to be this kind of artist. I'm going to do this kind of thing. I think it comes from someplace deeper than that. Anybody can be taught to paint or draw, but not everybody's an artist.
Right.
And that's doesn't mean there aren't lovely things from both kinds of people, meaningful things from both kinds of people. But
are there any works that are that you want to talk about that were from the show? I know that Wes, you had identified a few, and Joe is able to pop them up if you want to talk about it.
One of my favorites was Michael Vermette. Sorry, Bob, I beat you to it.
No, that's quite all right.
Michael actually comment, as a matter of fact, but carry on.
Good.
Joe should be able to pop it up, I think. There it is.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for
yeah.
Catan anyway.
You want to talk about it? What was it about it
Um, his brushwork, his subject, his treatment of the subject. I have a soft spot in my heart for his subject matter, the Katahdin area. But I've known him and his work for several years, and I just really admire. He's a hard worker. He's always working, and he's doing good stuff. So I'm a big fan.
That's great.
I'd like to just say I was really pleased to see Michael entered the show, and I love his work and have for a long time. I looked before this web cast began, and I believe this piece is still available. It's $390. It's pretty good.
That is. That is. So some other ones that were on your list, Jesse Moore's Two Grouse, which is a fabric piece.
There was, yeah, the fabric. I like the way she handled the material. Also, there was some glasswork that I liked. Martin Kremer did his lava flow plate, which I thought was really quite nice, unusual, and well done. Yeah, there's the Two Grouse.
Yeah, you don't see that too often in a lot of these art shows. That's very nice.
Hmm.
I would like to call attention to a couple of watercolors by a gentleman named Edward Nold, I believe his last name, Nolde.
Yeah, there's the glass piece.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Called Lava Flow.
Oh yeah, those were amazing.
Yeah, it's nice as a juror to see the variety. It's not the same thing over and over. It's really great. But I just want to say about those watercolors, Edward Nold, they're very simple, quick watercolors from Hermit Island, which is a place that I know a little bit and like very much. And I remember responding to the energy of the paintings, and they're not fancy finished pieces. There's a good example of one, but
The
just very,
bathtub.
yeah, but really nice, just quick renderings, and love the color, love the energy.
There was one, and I can't think of the name, and maybe you guys remember. It's this wonderful little simple thing of a bunch of terns, emperor terns. They're just little swoopy marks kind of with their crown on their head. And I can't find it, and I can't remember the name of the person. And I'm looking through this list really fast, but.
Was it a realistic painting or more of
No, it's,
okay.
I mean, yes and no, but no. I mean, it's more of a kind of graphic thing, which was just totally adorable. Really.
Well, while you're looking for that, we haven't talked about prints yet. We did have some prints to consider.
Oh, there it is.
For this
Called
exhibition.
Dawn
Maron?
Maron, M-A-R-O-N.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's called Squawk. I love this. I just think this is a.
So Joe, if you can pull that one up, Don Marin. In the meantime, I'll say Leslie McVeigh said it felt good to be part of something so lovely and positive during this unsettled time. So that's, oh yeah, these were,
Oh yeah, there we are.
yeah.
Very quick story. I did a story about Dawn and her husband. They lived in South Portland, and during the pandemic, they put some of their work out at the end of their driveway because a lot of people were walking down their street. It was a popular area for.
Oh my gosh.
And they put their work out at the end of the driveway just to brighten up the neighborhood, and also if anybody wanted to sell it, they could. So that was a fun, quick pandemic story for us to do.
Great.
And you mentioned John Stormer.
John Stormer, yeah.
So maybe we can pop up his work.
He had some prints in there.
Oh, hold on. We're looking. Now everybody can see the behind the scenes here.
I know.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was nice.
So is
Yeah,
that
that's classic, isn't it?
a woodcut piece? Or
I'm
is,
guessing linoleum, but I don't know.
oh, wow.
Yep.
Oh, engraving, yeah.
No, it doesn't tell us.
Description. So another one a couple of others you had mentioned were Sandra Huck, who had a driftwood sculpture.
Hmm.
That was on your list, Wes.
Yeah, very, very simple and charming, and yeah, that's it.
There you go.
Yep.
Great. Great.
Just love that composition.
And then let's see what else we had. You mentioned Richard Winslow's jar with lid, which is a ceramic piece.
Get this into the three-dimensional stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Almost looks up from a different time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Very nice.
And I was curious as to what sort of firing it was.
Well, food
Both-
safe last. It's good to know.
And it's sold.
There you go.
Ah, there we go.
So when you all, I mean, during, I suspect it isn't fair to ask you all what your favorite medium is, or if you have, are drawn to certain art, and how you keep that out of your head because you obviously need to be very objective.
Yeah, I'll take a quick stab at that. I trust my instincts when I am during a show, and I make my decisions based on how I react in the moment. I try not to overthink it too much, and I try not to intellectualize it too much. I allow room for that when I go back and reconsider, but I always just try to react, and that's as true if I'm looking online as if I'm walking through a gallery with 150 paintings or whatever pieces laid out, and I'm to look at all of them and get it down to 75. I feel I go through the same process in either circumstance.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same way. I seem to just, I could turn my computer on and show you what's in my house. And it's, color is really important to me, I guess, because it seems like I have a lot of stuff with a lot of color in it now that I'm looking around. Yeah, I don't know. It is a gut reaction. I really think it is. And for me, it does have a lot to do with my favorite stuff. I don't know. I don't think I have a favorite thing. I've got watercolor. I have a lot of oil paintings around, but
one of the things that I think this art show does is it really does allow new collectors, it's not, I don't want to say it's an entry level, but that with the prices, and as you said, Anne, it's accessible, I guess is a good way to put it. And I mean, I think back to when I was younger, a long time ago, and you kind of, are you supposed to be a collector, or having is, I think you said, Anne, having something that you respond to is really a big measure, isn't it?
It's huge. Yeah. I mean, and there's stories behind the things I have. Some of them were done by people who worked at Bowdoin and aren't there anymore. Some were from students. One of them is a Federico Castellan print from 1920 something that was in my grandmother's house that who knew. And I have another one that's of a bridge out north of Seattle that I commented on when I was there with my aunt, and that was it. And she sent it home with my son when he went out to visit her, so that to bring it to me, because it was something that I had expressed. Oh, I really like that, and I still really love it. So, but I do think it's I don't know. Everything has a little story, I think.
That's so true.
Yeah, and I think to sort of piggyback on what Bob was talking about, suspending judgment initially, just sort of like Bob says, go with the gut, see what you respond to. We always, as an educator, you talk to people about delaying judgment until you've had a chance to sort of describe what it is you're looking at, begin to get a sense of what it is, what's it made of, analyze it, speculate about it. And then once you've got that sort of background, then you're sort of qualified to make a judgment about it. But really try to suspend that judgment initially and just experience the piece and see where it takes you.
Yeah. I think you immerse yourself in a lot of art if you look at a lot of art too, and then you do change over time, you know more about the technique, you know more about how it was done, and that affects how you feel about it too, I think. I mean, I can't afford a Bruegel, but I spent a lot of time in Brussels in that giant room with all the Bruegels in it, just
Mm.
sitting on a bench, and oh, gives you the shivers.
Would you all say that the art scene in Maine is alive and well, and we should be optimistic?
2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I think so.
Excellent.
I
Oh, and
absolutely
we've got-
agree. Yes.
Yeah, you know more than anybody. Well, both of you do more than I do. I just know from my own little staycations this summer that every place I went to galleries or walked past galleries or looked in the windows, and there was a lot of sold stickers. There was a lot of stuff, a lot of people. It's cool. It's
Yeah, and
very,
it's not just the gallery selling work, which is absolutely happening, but I think artists are very much engaged in the moment. And I see a lot of artists of all ages, not just young artists who are out there, but artists of all ages responding to things that are happening right now in these times. And the work we're going to see soon, we're already seeing it. We're going to continue to see, I just think, a very vital, urgent body of work from a lot of Maine artists these next period of time.
yeah.
We're heading into just an amazing moment in our history, and it's going to be reflected in the art that we experience.
Well, I think the artists are creating more too because they have less to do. I mean, they really are working more than they maybe normally have time for in their, the Saturday painter is now not just Saturday. So
Well, I think this has been wonderful, and I cannot thank the three of you for the commitment you've made to the Yarmouth Art Festival. And it has been a pleasure for me to get to know each of you a little better over the last few years, and really appreciate the time you've taken out of your busy schedules to do the jurying and then to be with us today. And it's been great. So thank you. And to those who are watching, we appreciate you tuning in, and hope we can see each other in person soon.
Thank you for working with the charities you've been working with, Laurie.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
yeah, that's really makes us feel good for sure. It's been a lot of fun.
Yep,
I
I
love
agree
doing
with all
this.
that.
All right. Well, thank you all. Have a
Thank you.
great rest of the week, and stay warm and stay healthy.
You too. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.